Pele leaned in and said something to Freddie.
Don't let them change you. Keep working on what makes you different and what makes you special. It was great advice, but it caused me some problems.
But what could change Freddie Adu?
Soccer is going to explode, and it's going to be around this kid.
We were the Beatles. Everywhere we went, it was the Freddie Show.
And with that came the expectation, and with that came the pressure.
New episodes of American Prodigy drop Tuesdays from Blue Wire Podcasts.
What is Crack-A-Lack and Hardwood Knocks listeners? I am Dan Favale coming at you once more without my fantastic co-host, Adam Frommel. I am, however, super pleased to be joined by two more guests for this podcast as we continue our NBA team look-ahead package. First up is going to be Greg Wissinger. He covers the Sacramento Kings for the Kings Herald. He's the managing editor over there. He's also a freelance contributor for the Sacramento Bee. Follow him on Twitter at GWiss. That's at GWISS. After that, we are moving on to the reigning champion, Los Angeles Lakers. We're bringing on Jabari Davis. You can follow him on Twitter at Jabari Davis NBA. That's at JABARIDAVIS NBA. He is the co-host of the Dunks and Discourse pod, which also happens to be a Blue Wire podcast. So check them out over there. Before we get started, as always, please subscribe to our podcast. Download every single episode wherever you are consuming said podcast. And regardless of where you are consuming said podcast, please head over to iTunes, search Hardwood Knocks, throw us that 5-star rating, write a review. The reviews help just as much as the rating. So please do all that. We really appreciate it. We hope you're enjoying these daily pods that have like 2 or 3 episodes worth of content in there. And even if you're not necessarily a religious fan of any of the teams we're talking about, just make sure you're subscribed and downloading the episodes. We want to make sure we're covering this league thoroughly. And I, in particular, in my totally unbiased opinion, think we're doing a bang-up job. We've had some fantastic guests coming on over the past couple of months, and we will continue to do so. Without further delay, though, let's talk Sacramento Kings first with Greg Wissinger, and then move on to the Los Angeles Lakers with Jabari Davis. Jabari, welcome back to the Hardwood Knocks podcast. As I say, emphasis on back, because you've decided to return after experiencing what it's like to come on HWK in the first place. So I really appreciate that. How are you doing tonight?
Not bad at all. And let me just say, I appreciate that you invited me back. I mean, you're saying welcome back. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
I feel like I'm wasting your talent bringing you on just to talk about the Lakers because you cover the league nationally. And so I'd like to, it's more intriguing to cover a whole range of topics. But we are in team look-ahead mode, and the Lakers just won a title, and you cover them fantastically. So are you ready to talk some Lakers?
I'm always ready to talk Lakers. You know I'm a Hollywood homer.
Well, so I think the best place to start here is what was your general sentiment of the offseason? And it's not even like a question of was it good or was it bad, because it was objectively, I would say, a fantastic offseason. Even if you're wondering about the fits of some of the new additions, you don't normally see a championship team add as much value in a vacuum, I'll call it, as the Lakers did. And so were you taken aback at all by how successful it was? Was there a particular move that surprised you, one that you view is going to be especially impactful, anything along those lines?
Yeah, honestly, my overall feeling was kind of sort of what you just alluded to. Like most title teams, especially in their first run, they don't seem to make as many moves as these Lakers have in pursuit of a second crack at it. But all in all, on paper, it looks phenomenal. It looks like a phenomenal offseason. I have to agree with you. Again, for a group that, if we're being honest, a group, I'm speaking of the front office, that has been much maligned over the last few years or in years past, regardless of whether they earned it or not. And so, as you stated, in a vacuum, I love it, but we have to see how these pieces fit. There's a reason why they say championships aren't won on paper, because they're not won in the offseason. 1,000 different things could and likely will take place between now and and the time we get to the postseason play. But all in all, I think they did a fantastic job. In fact, better than I could have anticipated. And in terms of the actual moves, it isn't, and believe me, it's not that I'm trying to duck the question, but these moves, much like the ones that we saw out of last year's, it was sort of next man up. Everyone contributed at different times depending upon the matchup or simply how the flow of the game went. And I could absolutely see these new additions kind of doing the same. Now, make no mistake about it. I think the Schroeder deal, and I'm sure we'll get into it more, but I think that has the potential to be the most, to have the most impact or be the most impactful overall, because, obviously not only does it add like another playmaker and scoring threat that they've clearly needed, but in theory, it should significantly limit the added wear and tear for LeBron. It should just make it easier so that everybody, so that everything isn't entirely on his shoulders, when it comes to being able to generate offense for others. So while all of the moves excite me, and I think all of them will be beneficial, especially if this staff can find a way to make all the pieces fit, the Schroeder move is probably the one that I'm headed into the year thinking like it's going to be the biggest one.
And I think what helps about that is I'm sure some will think that it's Montrezl Harrell, but I just view. And I'm not trying to insult what Montrezl Harrell does. I think someone with his skill set in the league now, it's just easier to approximate what he does. And so someone like Dennis Schroeder, I think he's objectively the best player that they acquired this offseason. I do. Harrell has a case, and we're not dealing with peak Marc Gasol, so I don't even think he's really in the conversation there. And Wes Matthews, I don't think he belongs there, even though he did a fantastic job guarding Jimmy Butler in the Bucks series. I actually don't know why they didn't play him more in the fourth quarter. Never mind. I don't want to get into the Bucks there, but it seems like Dennis Schroeder, even if you don't think maybe he's the best player right now, I would say he has the highest ceiling of anyone they added on this team.
Yeah, and this isn't to take anything away from Harrell, because I actually am higher on the Harrell acquisition than it would seem that I would be, considering how, I've spoken very honestly about him, in particular, how he played in the bubble. But yeah, you got a 26-year-old guard, coming into his own, finally tasting, tasting what it's like to play for, and this is, I'm not being a homer here, but playing for an organization that's playing for something. You know what I'm saying? Right. Those first few years in Atlanta, that was the Hawks. I mean, no disrespect. I'm very excited for what they've got, going on now, and I'm anticipating, positive things from them this year. But a few years ago, they were a complete dumpster fire, and everybody knows that. So yeah,
and he wasn't even happy there, when they were winning, because he was backing up Jeff Teague. He didn't want to do that.
Yeah, young, not quite there yet in terms of being mature and accepting a role. But no, honestly, on this particular team with this group, I do believe that he's going to have the most impact.
And so, I have this written down later in our outline, but you're on Dennis Schroeder now. Let's talk about him. The Lakers half-court offense, it was shaky about league average when LeBron was on the court last year. It ranked in the 25th percentile of efficiency with him off the floor. And it was even worse, ironically, when Rondo was in the game. You look at what OKC did, and their offense was a dumpster fire when Schroeder played without Chris Paul. Does that worry you at all, or is this a situation where it's a lot of those no LeBron minutes in Los Angeles are going to come with Anthony Davis, and Dennis Schroeder wasn't playing with Anthony Davis when Chris Paul was off the floor in OKC?
And that's exactly where I was going to take it. Okay, so am I concerned? Of course, it's always a concern. I'm not one of those ones that completely disregards data or anything of that nature. Even if on the timeline, I'll mess with you about it, or poke fun at it. I can appreciate what the trends say. But like you said, he wasn't playing with Anthony Davis, and let's be clear. Even though, I know he came out and said that he was planning on starting, but whether he starts or comes off the bench or whatever the case may be, he's still also going to share the court with even LeBron. Right. So the truth of the matter is, I while it's a concern, it's only because I haven't seen it yet. It's only because I haven't seen what this group will look like together yet.
So I agree with you, and my bigger concern would just be he shot a career-high percentage from pretty much every imaginable range. You separated by short mid-range, long mid-range, all mid-range, threes, at the rim. Basically a career high from everywhere. And so if he doesn't replicate that, his value without LeBron on the court, that's where it goes down, because I still think he'll get the dribble penetration. You're still playing with AD. And his playmaking, I don't think he's the best passer, but like if the defense is going to collapse, he can make the right read. So my concern would just be more so his, like, can he replicate that level of scoring threat he became? Because look, if he also regresses, it's not even just a matter of the no LeBron minutes. I think you want to play him next to LeBron because you never had the opportunity to play LeBron alongside that level of playmaker last year where, okay, yeah, he spent some time with Rondo, but like Dennis Schroeder isn't like defenses are going to be 12 to 15 feet away from him when he's launching a three. Like they'll respect him from there. That opens up lanes for LeBron, and it gives you actually more of a reason, I think, maybe even to put LeBron off the ball at points. So if those numbers don't hold, or if he doesn't come close to replicating those, I think that's probably where the problem is, more so than, is Dennis Schroeder just capable of running units on his own?
And I agree with all of that. And then ultimately, is he going to accept? And this is the question. I'm not asking as though he's like some known malcontent simply because he didn't necessarily love things in Atlanta. But is he going to be willing to accept this role? Because like really that was what was the key for last year. Like we went into the year, for everyone, including Lakers fans, including myself, was questioning like, what's Dwight going to do on this team? What's Caruso's role going to be? How much of an impact can Rondo actually have? The fact that this staff and their organization was able to get everybody to not just accept the role, but to really truly embrace it was, I honestly think that is the reason why they ended up winning last year. Because if they don't, and they're as disjointed as they looked like they were going to be, I think that there's a very good chance that they don't end up winning. If Schroeder and Harrell and all of those guys are able to they're able to get them. And when I say fall in line, I don't mean just just be guys on the sideline. I'm saying accept the exact carved out role that this coaching staff has for him. I think once again, of course, like I stated earlier, you can't get ahead of yourself because nothing's won on paper. But once again, I would feel very confident about this group.
And look, I would assume, who knows what happens in the playoffs just because Rondo's a completely different player. But Schroeder is, aside from the passing, which Rondo's clearly the better playmaker, but because Schroeder's more of a scoring threat, he actually might just have more value as an offensive point guard overall, where Rondo's not that same level of scoring threat. You're going to get better regular season defense from Dennis Schroeder than you ever will from Rondo at this point. It's like that's sort of, I think, an upgrade aspect of this that really hasn't been explored since it happened.
And that's the thing. I'm trying not to be disparaging, when it comes to Rondo. I'm very happy that the 6 weeks, 6 week stretch that he had in the bubble worked out the way it did. The whole playoff Rondo thing, I leaned into it. You saw it. I enjoyed it, and I'm very happy for him that he went to Atlanta and got paid. I think that's the best way to cap that. But yeah, so for the folks out there that were saying like, oh, well, you just got a younger Rondo, it's like, no, you got a significantly better player than what you got out of Rondo. And honestly, even if the shooting carries over, even better than what you saw out of Rondo in the postseason. But to your point, agreed. Not only do you hope that it works out in the postseason, and we'll see what happens, once you get there, but you do expect him to be an 82 game player, which, quite frankly, they haven't had that at that position outside of, when they had LeBron there.
The Trez fit is the one that I'm more, I don't even know if you could say concerned, but like that's the one I would question more so than the Schroeder one. And so I'm curious how like you feel about that. And I don't know, is it just even pointless to ask because AD played with like alongside less dynamic bigs last year in Howard and McGee, where they're not going to give you the ability to put, like Harold can put the ball on the floor and just, blitz toward the rim. He even has, I would say at this point, he has a much better post game than either of those two. I don't really want the Lakers to work it, but and he's going to be like more powerful rolling. Probably not, he's definitely not the rebounder they are, but like, do you need him to rebound if he's going to be playing alongside Anthony Davis? At the same time, unless Davis is shooting like he is was in the bubble where he was basically Kevin Durant on long twos and was hitting threes. Now you are still like shrinking the floor again. And I guess where I would really question is you took what was your best spending tool in this offseason and you spent it on that type of a player. And so is it fair to question that fit, or are you just not as concerned about it?
No, I think it is fair to question it. Look, I'm not going to lie to you about this. I was absolutely stunned when the news of his acquisition, not accusation.
There have been some Montrezl Harrell accusations lately when you just look at how terrible the Clippers were behind the scenes.
Which is also funny because it's like, okay, so all these Clipper fans and even the pundits, they're dogging out Montrez and saying like he was the problem. It's like, but wait a second, he was like your sixth guy off the bench. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Yes, there are accusations, but no, like when the news came out, I was shocked. Not because I was allowing the bad stretch in the bubble to completely cloud my judgment on the guy, because we've seen him be very productive for several years now, but just because I didn't see it coming. All of that to say, I am curious how they're going to utilize him and whether he shares the bulk of his minutes alongside AD or Mark at the 5. But the one thing that I keep on reminding myself when it comes to having all of these questions is I just have to consider how good of a job this coaching staff did with last year's roster. Mm-hmm. Now you could, people can say that's being pie in the sky, but they really did a fantastic job of adjusting and playing to strengths, and they really put guys in positions to be successful. I don't feel like Trez received quite that consideration last year, quite frankly, when he was exposed attempting to defend the bigger bodied centers, even though that roster had Zubac on it, Zubac on it. Basically, I have more faith in this Lakers staff than I did, say in Doc's staff last year, to the point where, yes, there are legitimate questions, and I think your concern is legit. They've earned the benefit of the doubt from me, at least.
And look, I don't mean to oversimplify this, but they did just add the 2 leading bench scorers in the league last year. Yeah. And so it's like, how can you absolutely hate that? And it's, again, I don't know if they're the perfect offensive fit, but last year's team, I don't think when you look at the personnel was very comfy of an offensive fit, and they're definitely not any worse or more complicated. I would say they're at least a little bit better as a worst case scenario compared to the personnel that they had last year.
Look, we can be straight up about this. This roster is better, and yes, that's on paper, and yes, they're still going to have to make it fit. But this roster is better, and it fits, and the pieces fit. At least they appear to fit better. It might get funky with the Trez fit, especially with what you alluded to, especially if AD isn't shooting. Now he doesn't necessarily have to shoot like vintage KD, but especially if he drops back down, if he totally regresses, that might get tricky. But I honestly think they're going to be okay.
Yeah, they're going to be fine. We'll get to that a little bit later. They're obviously going to be fine. The actual fits that I love for this roster are the cheaper players that they added. Marc Gasol, he's someone who I think by extension is going to help you navigate let's call them the no LeBron minutes because of just the passing that he does from everywhere on the court. And yeah, maybe it's a problem that he still seems afraid to shoot when he catches the ball, but because of that facilitation, if you pair him with he is actually he's the big, and I guess Anthony Davis works with whatever big, but he can play alongside any of their bigs. If it's Trez, if it's Anthony Davis, if you just want to go small and it's for some reason Marc Gasol and Kuzma, you can do that. So he helps those minutes a great deal so long as he's healthy, not dealing with a hamstring injury, and he's just a smart defender. He can be played off the floor in certain matchups, but if you're going up against a Joel Embiid, if you're going up against a Rudy Gobert, he can still handle those guys. And now Anthony Davis doesn't have to, because I don't know how much you trust. You're still going to put those bodies if it's McGee or Dwight Howard on them, but you'd rather have Marc Gasol on those guys than you would McGee or Howard.
Exactly, and that's the funny thing. I heard a lot of folks saying hey guys, he's 36, right? That it's no one is expecting him to be 2014 Marc Gasol. That's not the expectation. If anybody's expected that, they're honestly they're a little bit clueless when it comes to this stuff. All he has to do is just play smart veteran basketball. Don't get in the way and don't get in arguments with the kids, man. Let's be real. Just be a good vet. I can't wait to see big to big passing. Okay, look, you know that I've been watching this game for a while. I still miss the traditional bigs, and it's okay. I appreciate where the game has gone, and I actually like that. I like the adjustments that have been made. But there's a part of me that will always appreciate big to big action. So I can't wait to see Marc Gasol playing with whichever big man they have next to him, whether it's him swinging it around, kicking it out to Markieff, or catching AD on a lob, or catching Trez on a roll, or whatever the case may be. So to your point, actually, kind of going back to your question from earlier, I actually don't have any worries about when LeBron is off the court because for whatever reason, I Marc Gasol wasn't in mind. The fact that you had, that second lineup in particular can have multiple guys I was going to say Trez, in Schroeder as well as Gasol that can both absolutely generate offense, not just make a pass here and there, but actively generate offense. It's part of why I have such confidence in this roster, being significantly improved.
And so I'm just trying to, it's not going to be the same situation, but I was trying to just like find a comparable level of talent that was coming off the floor in Toronto. So when he played without, and it's a limited sample, but when he played without Siakam and Lowry last year, Toronto's overall offensive rating was in the 81st percentile, and their half-court rating was in the 99th percentile. So he's bringing that, like, again, it's not going to be a perfect like context. Like a lot of those minutes came with, Norman Powell, and I'm sure some of them came with, not many of them apparently, as I'm looking at, came with Fred VanVleet. So that's even better for the Lakers because they're probably going to they'll have at least just as much talent around Gasol if he's playing without LeBron, if not more, because, there'll be some minutes where you don't have LeBron or AD on the court, and Gasol is probably like the player who's like is best suited to help you navigate those minutes, even more so than Dennis Schroeder. And look, even he might be close to as suited, because what we didn't really touch on is like, it won't be the same because Schroeder's not the same type of free throw generator in the regular season anyway, when you look at Lou Williams, or just, shot taker as Lou Williams. Like that pick and roll combination, if Schroeder's hitting his jumpers, that's going to be absolutely devastating probably.
No, it really will. And honestly, here's the craziest thing about this roster. And I'm not being funny when I say this. Kuz is like absolutely forgotten, and this is the thing. I don't know if you were going to come to him later, but the funniest thing about him is, look, he was probably he was overrated, and not to any fault of his own, by fans early on. And I actually believe that he's become an underrated player at this stage because of just how poorly folks view him. The truth of the matter is, you can, and speaking generally, you can dislike his personality on Twitter or dislike like the silly stuff and all that stuff.
I would encourage you to dislike some of his personality on Twitter, actually.
100%. But let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. He can still be a productive player. And if he, think about it. Last year, we went into the year saying Kuz probably needs to be their third most productive player. He need, on a night in, night out basis, they're going to need that third scorer. It's going to need to be Kuz. Right now, you can probably name 6 or 7 players that are likely, are likely options ahead of him. So if Kyle Kuzma has gone from being your third most expected, like the player that you expect the third most out of, to a true rotation guy, 7, 8, even 9th guy in a rotation, again, hey, burst my bubble if I'm going overboard, because I really, like I said, like I look at this roster and I say like, hey, led GM Rob Pelinka, Clutch, whoever wants to get the credit for it, they deserve credit.
Yeah, and look, I don't think you're going overboard with him at all. I think there's probably like that disparity in how some Lakers fans view Kuzma, and an example of this would be, not to use this on podcast, but like we recorded a podcast where we were talking about the Kuzma trade rumors, and like we proposed like he was being given up in the Derrick Rose trade, and like that, I still don't think that would have been a ridiculous trade to make. And like Lakers fans downvoted the podcast. Like they flooded us with, which kudos to Lakers fans. You have that type of clout. I'm not even insulting you, but
no.
Like there's a subsection of Lakers fans that I think are probably too high on Kyle Kuzma. And that's probably adversely impacted how the national perception of him is held right now. But you're absolutely right that he's improved. He's not better defensively than he now is offensively, but he's gotten like average defensively, like when you're looking at the assignments that they've given him, and where you can probably just pinpoint on that side of the floor what he does better, even more so on offense at this point, where it feels like everything he does there is like, yes, he can make an impact, but there's so many different wild card spots. But the fact that his defense has seemed to even out, particularly against wing assignments, so not even looking at, we're hiding him on these bigs, that winds up being absolutely huge for the Lakers. And this entire roster, I think it's not built. Last year, I don't think you could pick on any given night who the third best player would be. And I think and it ended up being, it worked for them. I think this roster will be the same, but in a more pleasant way, where it's like, well, the only reason that you can't pick who will be the third best player is because there's 4 of them that like legitimately factor into the discussion, where Gasol, Schroeder, Trez, and then I do believe Kuzma belongs there. And look, there are going to be nights where it's KCP. Like that's the type of talent the Lakers have, and in this case, and I even think it shook out like this last year, and I'm not even trying to be over complimentary, is that it just ended up being like a balanced amount of uncertainty, where it's like, you know what, we can't say who's going to be number 3 to step up, but like we know we have enough players to where there will be a viable number 3 that emerges.
Absolutely. And look, I was nervous. Like I picked the Lakers to go to the finals last year, but that was heart. That was my heart speaking. I thought, deep down, I was worried about the Clippers. I absolutely thought, okay, this is going to be the battle that we've all wanted, and it's going to be embarrassing as all hell if younger brother, excuse my language, if younger brother beats big brother. But it is what it is, and we'll just have to see what happens, when things shake out. But the fact that they like you said, it really was like a next man up. Like if it wasn't KCP, it was Dwight having a crazy night. If it wasn't Dwight, it was Alex Caruso having making an impact on both ends. It would and with this particular team, it's basically like that, but just supersized. Like it truly is. But just going back quickly to your question that you asked about Kuzma, or what you posed with Kuzma, I do agree with you. He's still better on offense than on defense because, of course, like most young players, or like most people in general, we like scoring more than we love getting down to the defensive stance. But he is a viable he's a guy that you can play on at different positions now because he's no longer a turnstile. So. Look, on threes, it's still touch and go because there are times where he locks in and it's like, hey, Kyle Kuzma, where the hell did this come? Where did this come from? But then there's other times like you'll see him, bite on every single pump fake, in a situation where he's matched up against Michael Porter Jr. or whatever the case may be. So like with most young-ish players or players still continuing to develop on, especially on that particular end, it's still a work in progress. But at the very least, he's a willing body out there.
Yeah, and so look, let's just get to the Kyle Kuzma part of this. I love that we're jumping around my outline. I love when it never goes how I laid it out. No, it feels like it's more organic. So, with Kuzma, what is the role for his now for this team? And also, do you think that he gets an extension, or do you think they'll kick that can down to restricted free agency? Because while they are hard capped, and I think they're super close to the hard cap. Like I think they're inside $200,000 or whatever it is. I'll double check my spreadsheet in a second. But by having him not having signed an extension where he's a poison pill, it does keep your trade options open. Because I'm not saying this is the route that they should go, but you do have sizable salaries now to move, even if you have to match it dollar for dollar. Dennis Schroeder, $16 million. KCP, his new deal, I think in the first year is 12.1. So Trez, 9.3 once he's eligible to be moved. So to have Kuzma still as that sweetener after you've traded all the first round picks, basically, is there an element of, well, that's actually more valuable than signing him to what could be a discounted extension now?
So I'm there with you on that. And as much as I was just singing Kuzma's praises, and I would love to see him have the opportunity to get that second, go at least compete for a second title. This feels like one of those situations where they did set themselves up perfectly. If in fact someone does come calling, for Kuz as the sweetener in a deal, let's just be honest about it. It could go either way, and they've also set themselves up to where they can just utilize their depth all throughout the season and just kind of boat race this thing. But part of me does feel like ultimately, if you're Kyle Kuzma, since you've already won a ring. And that I'm trying to put myself into a 25-year-old's head right now. But since you've already won a ring, you've already had the multiple runs with LeBron, and you played alongside AD, it's time to get paid. Now, in a perfect world, Kyle Kuzma does do the team friendly deal in order to stay and continue to compete for titles. I do not think that's going to take place. I think ultimately, if he's not moved at some point during this season, then Kuzma's going to get a payday somewhere else. Honestly, the biggest problem honestly is the fact that he's best played at the 4. Even though, we just spoke of him being able to, step out on threes and and play at the 3. He's best played at the 4, and he's just in a situation where he's probably the 4th option at that position. So ultimately, while yes, I think it's great to have break glass in case of emergency, Kuzma. I think he would be better suited, on another team, able to showcase and able to, really earn, that next big contract.
Look, if he's shooting, I don't know how valuable he'll be because, again, his next contract is coming up. But if he's shooting well from 3 and defending like he is now, where it's, again, I think a lot of people just viewed him as, he's only going to be able to defend the 4. And I actually think he's probably better off defensively now against 2s and 3s. I don't know if you agree with that. But if he's doing that and he's just hitting his catch-and-shoot 3s at a consistent clip, I'm not saying it needs to be absurdly high like it was at one point in the bubble where it was a jillion %. But if it's 37, 39% on catch-and-shoot 3s, that's a valuable guy, and maybe he's helping your team so much, or the Lakers are so far out in front of everyone, you don't move him. But it's just perception on him too. I think it's diverged because in his rookie season, he shot the hell out of the ball in isolation, and like I don't know that was ever meant to be the player he was supposed to be. But when you set that tone as a rookie, like that just lays the groundwork for the expectations to run rampant. I think that's a little bit of what has happened here too.
Which is also part of when, like, it's part of that old conversation where they say, like, is that productivity on a bad team, or is that, what is that? You know what I'm saying? Like, because somebody has to score the points. Was that why he was comfortable? And I'm not in any way trying to take anything away from him, because like a lot of other people, I saw that rookie year and said, well, hey, maybe we do have something here. That, I wasn't going nearly as far as others when they were saying, like, hey, they ended up with a lottery pick. It's like, no, let's pump the brakes. They got a great value pick at what was it, 27. And there's absolutely nothing, nothing wrong with that. But ultimately, I think he's somewhere between, that first and second year, because the second year was a down year.
Yeah.
I don't think he's as bad as he was in his sophomore year. I don't think, at least shooting wise, we should expect necessarily what we saw as a rookie. But if he can, kind of what, where this conversation has been going, if he can continue to develop defensively, and I won't lie to you, I don't love him on twos. I do like him on a lot of bigger threes. And I do agree with you that defensively, his best matchup is the 3, not the 4. But if he can just continue to develop on that side, or just continue to put forth a consistent effort on that side, like you said, that's a valuable piece. And ultimately, what this circles back to is the Lakers have put themselves in a position to where they have the option to whether, like, think about what we're saying, essentially, if they can get turn him into a 3-and-D guy, they'll have the option as to whether whether to move him or not.
What did you think about the KCP deal? I thought there was a lot of jokes made about, Clutch strikes again there, but it's only like 2 guaranteed. It was 3 years and about $39 million, but in the final year, I think under $4.5 million is guaranteed. It's like you can kind of look at it as, it was really like a 2-year, $30 million deal essentially if the Lakers want it to be that. And the thing with KCP is there's the level of let's call it misadventure with him on offense, where is he going to take like an ill-advised pull-up transition jumper? But he was so valuable to them, especially on defense, for a team that just wasn't flush with guys, because you don't want LeBron to do this. They just weren't built to have all these players be thrown at bigger wings defensively. And you look at just the assignments he was taking on in the playoffs, just the sheer breadth of his positional range on defense, where he's guarding, he faced Jamal Murray and Damian Lillard, but he was also guarding Jay Crowder. He spent possessions on Nikola Jokic. He spent possessions on James Harden too. You can move him around so much. And so just looking at that, and then just statistically, he's always shot good enough on catch and shoot threes where it's like, why not have him here? And it's so short term at this point where you could get out of that third year for, a song. I didn't understand the criticism, and I'm just wondering if the perception outside of LA is off with him, because it feels like I don't think he's now this team's third best player anymore. But if you ask me to look at last season in review, KCP is their third most valuable player to me, without question.
That's exactly where I was going to go. I was like, look, people can say what they want. They can, they can make fun of the ankle monitor. They can make fun of the sometimes wayward shots, or what did you say?
I like it. Wayward shots. No, we're going with that.
Because there are some where you're like, what are you doing? Okay. All right. That's fine. We can laugh at all those things, as much as we want, but KCP was in all likelihood the third most consistent Laker last year. While yes, there were plenty of games where a bunch of different people stepped up in terms of across the board, and especially in the postseason and definitely in the finals, he was there. He was that guy. So I had no problem with it. You're only paying the guy $13 million the first year, and it goes if I'm not mistaken, it goes up to a total of 14 or 15.
It's barely even it's not. It's 12.1 the first year, 13 and change the second, and then he's slated for 14 the third. But only, what is he at? I don't know what the guaranteed number is in the 4.9 is guaranteed in the final year of his deal.
Yeah, folks are we're all cynical jerks, and we all like to get our jokes off, and that's really what that is, because KCP was a valuable member of last year's championship team.
And look, the Lakers can afford to pay a player who's not do I think if they let's say they end up waiving him, I don't know if they will, but do I think that KCP is worth between 12 and 14 million a year. So let's say he finishes out the contract. That's probably closer to fairer value than not that I'm thinking about it. Like I would put him after last year above the MLE, so about 10 million a year. If it's an overpay, then it's not by all that much. And he's shown that he fits. So I don't know if it's just because it's the Lakers or because KCP has been like kind of a low-key meme since he was in Detroit. But I didn't understand. It seemed like, I don't want to say majority, but there was more of a negative reaction to his deal than I thought there would be.
All of the above, honestly. There's a Lakers tax. There just is, and that's okay. Like, see, this is the thing. Like, I'm not one of those fans that's like sitting there that's gonna tell you like, oh man, woe is me because nobody likes my team. I don't care, man. Like, trust me.
Your team just won the championship.
I have lived a charmed life. I'm 41 years old. I'm aging myself here. I'm 41 years old, and I grew up in Los Angeles. You can do the math on how many rings I've been able to experience and how many playoff runs. You know what I'm saying? Like it. So I don't care if people if people don't like my team. The reality is this: KCP is a valuable player, and I'm very happy that they re-signed him. I was actually worried that he was going. I was worried that some silly GM was going to actually give him like a foolish deal, and I'm glad they didn't.
Well, yeah, I don't know if he signed so early that maybe it wasn't a concern, but like, what if the Hawks just decided that they didn't have a chance at Bogdanovich and they decided to, give money to KCP? Like, he would have fit there, and they had more cap space than anyone in the league. So, like, that was kind of a real risk. The other big addition that they made on the perimeter since KCP was a re-signing, Wesley Matthews. I think that's just a great objective fit. Looking at it in terms of replacing Danny Green, he gives you more defensive optionality because he can cover some of those bigger wings where I think you want Danny Green predominantly on 1s and 2s and some 3s, where Wesley Matthews, it's like you can get 1 through 3 out of him, and then some, small ball 4s, like he can defend those types of guys. But Lakers fans, or at least some of them, and I'm not even talking about the ones that gave him death threats after the finals game, which was just ridiculous, obviously.
Yes.
But he shoots under 29% from 3 in the finals, and it did seem like Lakers fans turned on him. I will say that I think there are going to be moments where the Lakers miss Danny Green relative to what Wesley Matthews is doing because, you mentioned wayward decision-making with KCP. Like, Wesley Matthews will try and put the ball on the floor and do things that Wesley Matthews post-Achilles injury shouldn't be trying to do. And Danny Green very much so played within the confines of his game on offense. Like, it was, I'm going to shoot catch and shoot 3s. I'll run around a little bit or I'll cut, but like, I'm not going to try and do more unless I, really have to. Weslly Matthews is going to give you moments where you're going to wonder, like, oh, why did we get rid of Danny Green?
And that's the funny thing because I did see that. I saw a lot of folks, like immediately either saying like F Danny Green. It's like, come on, guys, like relax, man. The guy just contributed to your team winning a title. Right. I recognize he missed that opportunity for the game winner, but they still won. It doesn't matter.
It's also not a coincidence. So now he's won 3 titles, one with the Spurs, one with the Raptors, one with the Lakers. He's missed a ton of big shots. I said this on Twitter. It's not a coincidence that he's been in a position to miss so many big shots. He's on so many good teams for a reason because he helps those teams.
Yeah, exactly. It would be like getting upset with Robert Horry for those 3s that he missed in the last run, with the Lakers, where they had the opportunity and it just didn't fall down. I mean, look, you got the wins. Take the wins. No, honestly, for that subset of fans of any fan base, really, but of in particular of the Lakers fans, there's never going to be any satisfying them. I have been told, like, so keep in mind, I grew, came up, in the 80s, came of age in the mid 90s at the same exact time when Kobe Bean Bryant, went there. Right. So it was for obvious reasons. I was a Kobe guy. I have been told by some of the crazies on Twitter, you always disrespect Kobe. You are the worst. You're this and the other. Like, and it's like, guys, I'm actually a homer. Like, this is friendly fire here, but it doesn't matter. Like, there's just no satisfying certain folks. There are certain people that are always going to react negatively or crazily or whatever the case may be. All of that said, I agree with you. If Wes has situations where he's trying to do too much, I have a feeling he'll be reined in pretty quickly. But Lakers fans, you should be ready for it because if those of you that didn't watch a ton of Milwaukee basketball, I'd say once or twice a game there are things that Wes does where you're just like, what the hell is this? What are we doing here?
Yeah.
you take the good with the bad, but you just hope that the bad isn't a lot.
This does bring me to another question I have. How does the wing rotation for this team shake out? Because and it depends on who you consider wings. Like LeBron is basically your point guard at this point. So there's West and there's KCP, and it does get a little murky after that. Like, is Kuzma going to get just the majority of his time at the the 3 and some of the 2 spots? Like, where is Markieff Morris factoring into this? I don't think you want him playing the 3. Could we see, is this the year that Alex Caruso, does he play up a little bit just because he has the size, to get away, not just at the 2, but against some 3s? And so how does this wing rotation for the Lakers shake out this season?
I think you'll see exactly that. And to your point, yeah, Keith, you don't want him at the 3. I think you'll see him at more 4 and 5, depending upon who's on the floor with. I could see KCP being getting the bulk of the minutes, West also getting the bulk of the minutes, Caruso because they're going to need to carve out minutes for him as well. Actually. There were periods where they weren't stretches, but there were situations where some of them came off of a switch, some of them came off of straight out of a timeout where they put Caruso on 3s. So you're right, he does possess the strength and the size, and some of the bulk that he needs, depending upon the matchup. I honestly think it's going to be kind of like what we saw last year, where the coaching staff really did a good job of playing the situation. Yes, they had a certain rotation, but if if it didn't work, or if the matchup called for something else, or there was just a situation where it was time to try somebody else out, everyone on that roster embraced that next man up mentality, and I think these guys will honestly do the same.
So who's the most interesting non-marquee player on this team? I guess I should phrase it. I'm assuming that it will be Caruso, and I'm just wondering now for our listeners, can you just maybe outline his value, what he does for this team, and maybe if his game is is his role going to be amplified this year? What is it that he can bring to the table for the Lakers this season more so than last year? And if it's not him, if you're going to go with Talen Horton-Tucker, I'm absolutely here for that.
Well, okay, so if you're asking me who I'm interested in watching, in particular early in the season, Talen Horton-Tucker is that guy. But yes. Honestly, no. I mean, look, he's the mystery box. Right. Yes, you saw a little bit of him last year. In fact, Frank Vogel, he messed around and put him out there against the Rockets in actual meaningful basketball, and I loved it. But
look, is it really meaningful if it's a James Harden team in the second round?
Damn. Excuse my language. Yeah, you have a point there. Well, I look at it like this. He's the mystery box. He's the guy that everybody's raving about. I don't know if you paid attention to him. He's significantly changed his body from even the start of his rookie year. He's one of those guys that came back from the quarantine down 30 pounds and ready to go. So it was nice to see him rewarded with even the minimal amount of time that that he received. But I'm very intrigued to see what he can develop into with another year under the tutelage of the Phil Handys of the world, the Mike Penberthys of the world, the Miles Simons, all the guys that the player development guys that the Lakers have. I'm very but really Caruso, what you asked me to break down what he can do. I mean, anybody that's watched him play, as long as you're able to watch and appreciate a guy that just goes out there and gives it his all, you're going to like Alex Caruso. You don't have to like us, silly Lakers fans. And I say us, when we're literally just trolling you, just trying to make you mad on the timeline. Mm-hmm. But if you watch his game, he does all the stuff that, all the stuff that you want. And let's be real. Okay, I'll go here. If Alex Caruso was named, Andre Carter, I honestly think a lot of the vitriol and a lot of the pushback that that we see from folks, it wouldn't be there, because he does all the different things that you want out of that scrappy tough nose first or second guard off the bench, where he's willing to get into the passing lane, he's willing to stick his nose in there against bigger guys, he accepts whatever role and whatever minutes or whatever place in the rotation he's given. I genuinely believe that if folks would get past the distaste of us gloating about him, they would actually love what Alex Caruso brings to the table.
Yeah, I mean, look,
the shot needs to be more consistent. I would love that, but then again, it's that feels like I'm nitpicking, because he brings everything else consistent.
Yeah, and look, the motor is just there, and he's going to play like he's just solid defensively. It just feels like you're not looking at him where it's like, oh, he was just beaten away from the ball, or he's overmatched when he's on the ball. Like, he has that type of value. I find myself wondering if he can be a little bit more plug and play for them offensively, because like maybe that would lead to more minutes. He shot under 35% on catch and shoot threes. He's not a guy who's going to hit a ton of his shots pulling up off the dribble. He can definitely, we know, get above the rim. And look, to your own point, I don't even know if you have to say, like, let's change his name. If he's not on the Lakers, like, if this is something, like, you're probably not getting so much vitriol for him. And yeah, there are social media managers who have taken it wild, but it's because he's on the Lakers and he draws a reaction. So it's like, it's not really his fault there. But I'm wondering if you think that he has the ability to be, and now maybe I'm just off base by saying this, you watch more Lakers than I do. Can he be more plug and play for them on offense?
I honestly, I'd have to see it. And I don't want to, I'm not trying to be disparaging. I'd have to see it with consistency. It's kind of like you know, he's the guy out of nowhere in the half court set, he drops a dime, and it's like, oh man, where did that come from? And then you're waiting to see it more, and you're waiting to see it more, and you don't see it. So and some of that can be that he's still a guy that's developing as a player, and he's still was still obviously learning how to play alongside Anthony Davis and LeBron James, and simply understand what his role would be. So maybe we'll see more of it this year, but honestly, I can't bank on it until I see it. And there's no shame in just being what he was last year. Like, to be clear.
Not to just jump back to Talen Horton-Tucker there, but I would imagine that he's probably not going to get. Maybe he gets more minutes this season, because this will tie into a question I'm eventually going to ask you. But we don't know how many players will have to sit out because of COVID, or how many players will get scheduled rest on non-national TV nights. Let's just call them. So maybe there will be an opportunity for him to get minutes in the regular season. I just don't know what to expect from him. I obviously haven't seen enough from him at the NBA, but every time I watch him, I'm like, he kind of feels like a version of Julius Randle who won't suck something awful on defense. Is that like apt or just not? Is it completely wild?
It's not. Well, I mean, he's smaller. Like, and that's the thing. Like, I always have to remind myself, he looks super long because his arms are like, damn near down to his knees, but he's only like 6'4". So he has to, like, he's a tweener. Like, I don't know why I'm like, I'm sugarcoating it. He's a tweener that I don't know yet. I don't know if he's going to be maximized at the 2, or if they're going to play him up, because he still, even though he got into shape, he still has a very sturdy body. I'm interested to seeing if they play him some 3 minutes. But the as a team, as an organization, they're at least making all the sounds as though they expect big things from him.
Yeah, Frank Vogel was like,
anticipate him being a part of the rotation.
Yeah, Frank Vogel said he was going to be a part of it, I think, or at least said, I'm like, he's been fantastic. He's going to help us immediately, and I'm coaching harder than everyone. What they really can't afford, and well, this is an aside, but I would like to see him and Mikal Bridges just put their arms together just to see who has. I mean, 7'1" wingspan, I think, is what Horton-Tucker has, and at 6'4", that's just that's going to bend your brain. I think what they can't afford to have is, like, if he's going to play like the 2 or the 3, there needs to be some semblance of a spot up jumper there, because with the way that their front court is set up, and then even with some of their wings, where it's if you want to consider Alex Caruso there, just their perimeter players, even LeBron, Kuzma, where you can't guarantee those guys are going to be above average from 3, you can't afford to necessarily throw in another like perimeter player who's going to shoot a suboptimal clip from deep.
That's an excellent point, and that right there is probably going to be the determining factor and how much of a part of the rotation he is, because I honestly believe Caruso is going to be a part of it, and you can't have both of them out there if neither one of them can shoot. If neither one of them are at least a threat. If neither one of them at least can get somebody to shade towards them. You know what I'm saying? So like, yeah, no, like like I said, mystery box. I can't wait to see. I'm very excited about him, but it would be disingenuous. It would be disingenuous for me to like try to say like, oh yeah, he's this, because I have no idea.
And this sort of ties into that, but like, what should we expect from the Lakers players management this year? Like, they finished the season fewer than 2 months ago. There was the report that came out the NBA is going to fine teams if they're sitting guys. That's really only for national TV nights. And I know that the Lakers have a bunch of national TV games, but I think only like a third of their games, less than that, on national TV. So like, I feel like they will have an opportunity if they want to. I'm certainly assuming they're going to rest LeBron? Are they going to give rest nights to Anthony Davis? And how, like, should we expect it to be stark? Like, where they're just giving, even a guy like Wesley Matthews, who's had an Achilles injury, he's in his 30s. Like, should we expect that type of approach from the Lakers where they're not punting on the regular season, but they're like, as long as we have a top 4 seed, like, we're fine. Is that, like, sort of the Lays far approach that we should expect from LA? Or do you think that they'll be a little bit more committed to the regular season because you have guys like, Montrezl Harrell wants to play all 82 games?
I absolutely think, what you're saying makes total sense. And that's actually the approach I anticipated last year. And part of me wants to say that I expect LeBron to load manage a bit, but the truth of the matter is, if he didn't do it following the catastrophic groin injury, it's probably not going to happen this year unless it actually needs to. Now, the types of minutes, however, those should be different. I think, guys like LeBron and AD, I think where their rest is going to come in is going to be in the form of taking a back seat whenever he can, especially LeBron. Taking a back seat whenever he can and allowing others to kind of do more of the heavy lifting throughout stretches, especially in particular of the regular season, before ramping it up as he customarily does right around this year would be around game 50, so that he, so he's ready to go. I don't anticipate guys sitting a ton of games. And look, I had it flipped last year. This year, watch right out the gates, they'll probably be sitting. But honestly, I don't think so, because particularly because of the depth that they have, as well as because a guy like Trez, like you said, wants to play all 82. A guy like Schroeder, for obvious reasons, wants to get in there and go to work. A guy like Kyle Kuzma, for obvious reasons, needs to get in there and continue to showcase what he can do. So because of their depth and because of the very specific guys that have a lot of different reasons to be motivated, I honestly don't think that they're going to have to set out a ton of games. I think I think you're going to see a lot of games where it looks like LeBron is coasting, and then he'll pick and choose when he wants to turn it on. But if he doesn't have to, you'll see a lot of LeBron, and AD on the bench in the fourth quarter, with their hoodie on.
I think it's going to happen with LeBron this year for some reason, because I really do think, look, he's about to turn 36, and I think that that kind of like went by us because the offseason was so short and last season ended so late that you're used to having more time before his next birthday rolls around. But he's about to turn 36, and the other thing with that is, like, the Jordan conversation, like, we know he cares about it. I feel like he vacillates on whether he admits it. You now have 4 rings. You're probably favored to win a 5th this year. And if you get a 5th, that's where the conversation, it's not even starts to turn. I think that's where LeBron starts to get to consensus. Because what does the argument then become against him because he has 1 fewer ring than Jordan? And you're going to look at his record in the NBA Finals, and then at that point it's almost at 500. And how are you going to penalize him for being to 11 NBA Finals at that point? And just the stakes there to the bigger picture, and just knowing how recently he finished last season and how it was kind of stop and start for him. We know no one takes care of their body better than him. I just expect that to happen with him. And then maybe it happens less with Anthony Davis, because I could see him, if it does happen with LeBron, like sensing the opportunity to maybe really enter the MVP discussion this season.
Hey, honestly, from your lips to the basketball god's ears, because I'm serious, that's what I would love to see. I would love to see him really scale back, and then, like I said, right around game 50, just ramp it up and get his body to where he needs it to be, heading into the postseason. I don't believe it. I just don't believe it, and I agree. For all of the reasons that you just mentioned, it makes sense. It would totally make sense. But I thought last year it would have made sense, especially when they got out to that 24-3 start, and it was like, okay, well, you don't have to push the pedal to the metal quite as much, but he still didn't. But no, to your point about Anthony Davis, it's funny. That was my bold prediction. I don't even remember what show it was on, but that was my bold prediction, was that LeBron would take a back seat, not because he was load managing, but simply because he didn't, he wouldn't need to, and that would, that would kind of like open up that opportunity, to your point, so that Anthony Davis could, actually enter the MVP conversation.
Now, LeBron's teams, I would say, are maybe not so much in Miami, but definitely since leaving Miami, and even his first go-round in Cleveland, they're generally fairly aggressive, it seems like, at the trade deadline or leading up to it, because it always seems like they have one glaring hole. And I think that you could argue on this roster, like, they would like to have more wing depth or, like, functional ball handling from the wings that they do have, not even just bodies. But because you're looking at, like, sort of their hard cap situation, do you expect them to be less aggressive at the trade deadline, or do you still think that this is a team that will be and it's tough to say without watching the games, like because maybe they're so far out in front of everyone you can't even sense a weakness. But what do you kind of expect from them looking at mid-season transactions where, will they maybe just monitor the buyout market to see what happens, or are they going to be actually active, like looking for a trade, or are they more likely to do like really even nothing, like not even some like granular nuts and bolts stuff?
I think you hit it on the head. I think it's buyout market guys, unless they're in a position where they need to make a move. And since, like you said, we have to watch the games, but just looking at it, I don't see a situation why they would need to. I don't necessarily expect them to be to be extremely aggressive, but then again, I didn't expect them to be this aggressive this offseason.
Right.
I did not expect them to be this aggressive. So I guess you just never know. Like the one thing that Pelinka had and this front office has shown me is that, like, expect the unexpected and honestly, save your questions and just kind of watch. So, my gut tells me it's a buyout situation where, like I said, like in case in case down the line you do need to, use Kuzma in a deal, you can explore that, depending upon how things go. But I really have no way of knowing, because like you said, we haven't seen the games. We don't know how the pieces are going to fit. We don't know, like if after 25 games it's like, oh no, this is a very glaring weakness, or a very a spot that they're going to need to solidify. So we're going to kind of have to wait and see. But going in, I think it's going to be more of the buyout situation.
Would you like to hear my hot, perhaps unhinged take on that?
Give it to me.
I would not be surprised if Montrezl Harrell finishes the year on a different team.
You think?
Just looking at his, like, what they can do with him for salary matching purposes, and again, the hard cap within this matters, but like that seems the one. If they want to take a bigger swing, like you look at Schroeder's salary, I don't think they're going to move KCP, and he's represented by Clutch and just sign that long-term deal. And they just don't have the wing bandwidth to be like, hey, let's just trade our best wing, basically, like outside of LeBron, of course.
Of course, yeah.
It seems like I feel like they would make some sort of a middling, like mid-tier move, and knowing that you have Gasol and that you probably didn't know that you were going to have him before you signed Trez, that gives them some leeway to make a move with Trez, I think, because he's not going to be someone, unless you disagree, and this would be my next question, he's not going to be closing most games for them. And so that's the area that I look at, and I'm like, that's the player. I'm just looking at his salary. I'm looking at what they kind of need. I'm looking at teams that just might be interested in him because he's not too old, can maybe get you both the 4 and the 5 spots. Yes, he could be a free agent if he has the player option, but also like maybe he won't be, and we just saw his market was squeezed this year. So if he commands more money, how expensive will he actually be? I'm just looking at him, and it would not just like I sort of, and a lot of people did this, but like you saw the end of the Clippers season, you're like, it wouldn't surprise me if he left the Clippers. I'm in that sort of boat right now where it wouldn't shock me if he ended the season on a team other than the Lakers.
So here's the thing. First of all, half the roster is represented by Clutch, like as he is.
I forgot he was represented by Clutch. You are correct. Okay.
No. Literally, like I'm not joking when I say half. I think it's half. So like really, they need to get the Wish app off, or the Wish logo off, and just go ahead and just drop that Clutch logo right
maybe
there.
Just
an
emoji of Rich Paul's face. Yeah, like just.
Hey, I would be here for it, because it would make so many people upset. I caught myself that time. It would make so many people upset. No, so when you. Prior to you posing this, I would not have seen it, but I can see it. Like, I feel like I can hear Jimmy now. And yes, this is a white man can't jump reference. I feel like you have opened my eyes, and I'm like, oh, you know what? They did kind of set themselves up that way. And you're right. It is, and I guess it's more of a testament to the depth that they were able to compile. They don't have to keep him. And specifically to your point about him not closing, how in the notes you asked me, what the most common closing lineups would be? I wrote 3 different ones, and he wasn't in any of them.
Oh, wow. You wrote 3 different ones and he wasn't in any of them? That's actually surprising.
Yeah, and it's not a knock, it's not a slight, and of course there will be games that he's on the court and he does close, but for whatever the reason, he didn't show up in my rotation specifically when it came to closing things out. Now, am I anticipating it taking place? No, but you make a strong case, and honestly, it does make sense. In particular, not just because they were able to to bring Gasol in, but they were also able to retain Markieff. So they've got some flexibility and different bodies and different looks that they could show it that they can throw at folks. And hey, and in particular, like if Kuzma ends up staying, like say Kuzma's not a part of that deal, then all of a sudden that opens up minutes at that position for him as well. So no, like. I didn't necessarily anticipate talking about a Trez trade, but here we are.
Well, look, it was the Gasol signing is the one that kind of led me to it, because it's like they don't Harrell. Yes, maybe he'll spend some minutes beside Anthony Davis, but like there's not like he doesn't need to be log anytime as your de facto 4. Like however you want to consider, maybe Davis is considered the 4 in that situation, but you have like that's covered between Kuzma. You could throw LeBron in there. You have Markieff and Anthony Davis, of course, and then at the 5, it's like all right, well you need a good backup 5, and he was it. And maybe you want to try some Markieff like at the 5 when Anthony Davis isn't on the court, but you're not going to be closing that way anyway. But now you have Gasol, and so it's like I would assume, and like let's just lead that into the question of what closing lineups you wrote down. But I would assume they're still going to want to close. It's matchup based, but in a lot of them, I think Davis is still at the 5. So if you're not going to have Gasol or Montrezl Harrell on the court, one of them at least becomes expendable, and Gasol's making the minimum, so you're just not like you're not moving him, and so that's what like led me to that. I wouldn't predict it. Like maybe come back to me in a month or something. I think he's gonna be good for this team. And people remember how he was playing in the bubble. He just wasn't healthy, and he was grieving the loss of, was it his grandmother? I think it was. I don't want to misattribute to who passed away.
I think you're right, but also that entire team didn't want to be there. That's actually what I was alluding to. Like, it's funny that they want to point the finger at him, which, yes, he was bad, but also misused and also going through all of the different things that you just laid out. But nobody on that team wanted to be there, and that was very clear.
Yeah, and look, I mean, there was also just the dynamics in that locker room. I feel like maybe we should have seen this coming, knowing how Lob City ended, where Doc Rivers like couldn't really get that under wraps, and then also you had Lou Williams, Trez, and Beverly. These, we want to play 83 of 82 games every year. To Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, who are just very much, not only are they superstars, but like Kawhi's been on a load management even before he was injured, because the Spurs like just operated with, we're not going to play him 38 minutes a game. That's just not going to happen outside the postseason. So maybe we should have predicted like the drama in LA more than we did. But for the Lakers specifically, again, we know it'll change on matchups. What do you think will be their most common closing lineup, or what are the 3 that you wrote down for them?
Okay, so I basically just talked myself through it in my answer, but basically it was, I look at it as AD at the 5, LeBron at the 4, probably Wes at the 3, KCP at the 2, and Schroeder at the 1, or Caruso at the 1, or instead of Wes, and KCP. Basically, it just depends on the matchup. But that first lineup is kind of what I see it as. I know they love Caruso, especially down the stretch, and he absolutely locks in defensively. So if Schroeder's not getting it done, or like if for whatever reason Caruso's a better matchup, I can see him being there. But like, say for instance, you needed a bigger body out there. Perhaps it could look something like Gasol at the 5, AD at the 4, Braun at the 3. That's a very big front court, obviously. KCP and either Caruso or Schroeder. But like you see where I'm going with this. I honestly believe that those are going to be those the main guys, especially down the stretch of games.
And you just hit it on the head. Is like, so if there's going to be dual bigs at the end of games, it's more likely to be Gasol and AD than it is to be AD and Trez.
Well, because in particular, if you need that bigger body out there, I don't necessarily know why you would put AD. Like say for instance, you've got a situation where you need a stop against Jokic down the stretch. Do I think that AD can guard him? Yes. Would I feel better if putting Marc Gasol on him with AD shading? Yes. Mm-hmm. Do I want Trez on Jokic down the stretch? I think we know the answer to that. Thank you, Doc.
The one thing that I think could get interesting, that I think you alluded to indirectly, is you didn't have Kuzma in any of those lineups, and with him sort of looking at his future, and it's not just a matter of getting paid, but the role he's playing on the team, if he's just not even factoring in to their regular closing rotation, I wonder if that just becomes a thing where maybe they're more likely to move him because he just won a championship and it seems like he likes being there, but look, he's in the prime of his career. You want to be on the floor when it matters most, and he's another one that you look at after. I would say he's more likely to close games than Harrell, but after Harrell, it's like you look at their main players in their rotation, and he's probably the next most likely to consistently get the shaft.
Man, honestly, and I again, he's the forgotten man, and I mean no disrespect, because I didn't even realize that I had forgotten him. Of course, there could be situations where Kuz does close out, especially in games where he's got it going. And in particular, he's doing well on the defensive end. I could absolutely see it taking place. But yeah, like I mean no disrespect, nor any shade, by leaving him out.
Is there a quirkier lineup that you would like to see this team trot out? Not in crunch time necessarily, but just at any point over the season that you're hoping they try out.
I honestly, I haven't given it enough thought yet. Like, I'm in that mode where it's like, okay, let's get to the preseason. We're starting on Friday. Let's get to the preseason and see what the pieces kind of look like. But I don't know, a quirky lineup, maybe. In the event, like, say you have a situation where you for whatever the reason is, you've got AD and LeBron not on the court, right? Or say they're not available. Maybe Gasol at the 5 with Gasol at the 5, Keith at the 4. That's an interesting, alignment. You can even throw Kuz at the 3 in that situation, because you're gonna have that is and those are the games, like, and I don't know if you watched any of the games where either LeBron or AD ended up sitting last year. Those were the games where Kuz basically said, like, okay, this is my time to shine, and he stepped up to the plate. So in those situations are where you honestly, a guy like Kuz is gonna have to just steal his opportunities. Like, it just really is.
You kind of stole my vibes on that one, because I wanted to see, like, I was looking at, look, there'll be a few minutes where LeBron and AD are sitting together. Like, let's go Gasol in the middle and then just downsize, like, across the board, where it's, I want KCP, Wes, Caruso, and Schroeder just as the 4 behind him. And, like, let's just get weird and see if you can, push the pace a little bit. Like, Marc Gasol's not going to run, but he could toss outlet passes if he needs to. It's funny that I feel like you can't really get too quirky with this team, because so few minutes are going to be played without both LeBron and AD. Like, you almost picked it, like, for the closing lineup for me was like, maybe you don't include Dennis Schroeder in there, and it's LeBron, AD, Wes Matthews, KCP, and then go with Kuzma or Caruso. Like, if we're looking at a serious lineup that you could go more offbeat. But, like, that just didn't seem weird enough. So, like, give me Gasol with, I'll call them 4 smalls. Like, I don't even want Kuzma on the floor there then. Let's just go Caruso, Dennis Schroeder, Wes, and KCP, and Marc Gasol in some, like, second unit heavy type lineups.
KCP at the 4, I'm here for it. Honestly, KCP will feel like Luke's coaching him again, because that used to take place.
So what would be, you could factor anything you want into this, rest nights, will they make moves? What's a realistic win total for this team during the regular season? And you could base it off of 82, because I know it's hard to think of it in 72 games, but I will convert it to 82 if you do come up with a 72 game one. And then also, what's a realistic finish for them in the Western Conference standings?
Because I think they're deep, because I don't think they're going to skip a beat. I've got them. I bet the over on this one. Let's just say if I were on betonline.ag, I would bet the over. I've got them somewhere between 52 and 55 wins. So, what is that? 52 and 20.
So that's 59 win pace over the course of an 82 game season.
Yes.
That's
I think legitimately that's where they're going to fall. Barring anything crazy. And probably a top seed.
So I have them in, like, the 48 to 49 range, which is 55 to 57. And I'm questioning, I feel like one of the Clippers and Lakers are not going to care enough about the regular season to go full bore after the 1 seed. And I just think it's the Lakers, because they don't have as much to prove anymore as the Clippers do. And maybe they both just end up, like, sort of punting. At the same time, like, we talk about their depth, I kind of feel like they're so built for the regular season now with Schroeder and Harrell, and that's where this team is better. I don't know if adding them necessarily makes the Lakers a lot better for the playoffs. I also don't know that they needed to get a lot better for the playoffs, because one of the, maybe it's not an understated storyline, but one of the biggest pluses for the Lakers this summer is that the teams that were nearest to them, none of them got significantly better. Most of them, you could argue, got worse relative to the postseason. Like Denver, regular season, fine, but not having Jeremy Grant or Torrey Craig defensively, unless they make a move midseason, they're going to be worse in the playoffs. The Jazz are probably lateral. They'll have Bojan Bogdanovic back, but they don't match up, like, particularly well defensively against the Lakers, I don't think. The Clippers, I think losing JaMychal Green ends up being a big hit for them. They're still probably, they're a threat, but are they better than last year? I'm not going to say that by any stretch. Portland got a lot better, but they weren't close enough for the Lakers to for me to worry about. So, and Dallas too, like, I think they got a little bit better, but you can't trust KP's health. And, if he's matched up against Anthony Davis, like, that's a matchup he's going to lose anyway. And so, like, that really helps the Lakers too. So they might be more built for the regular season than I'm giving them credit for, which is why I don't think that you're too high on them. I'm just anticipating them not caring as much about picking up regular season wins.
Yeah, I mean, like, do I think they should care? No, because this team showed that it really doesn't matter. Just get to the end of the line in a healthy state, or relatively healthy state, and I'll take my chances with them. But kind of to your point that you were just making, that's the the roster is why I'm so confident. It's not because I'm just like, oh yeah, just gonna beat everybody. I don't see any holes. So unless unless the pieces simply don't fit, or they forget how to play basketball, for whatever reason, I see them as that that dominant of a team.
Do you think they're the 1 seed then? I would argue a 59 win pace would probably put them there. Is that what you would then be predicting?
1 or 2, yeah. I do.
I think that's totally fair. I was going to ask you this at the top of the pod. What do you make of like the contracts that LeBron and AD signed this summer to wrap this up? I think the LeBron extension surprised a few people, even though when you look at the timing now with Bronny potentially coming into the NBA and then the over 38 rule, like it kind of makes sense. Were you a little bit surprised that maybe AD went for 5 years? And what's the importance, though, of having these two now under contract beyond next season?
So LeBron's, yes, it was a surprise. I didn't anticipate it, especially because he jumped the line. Like the word was out about AD, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh yeah, by the way, LeBron re-upped. It's like, oh, okay, cool.
That's why AD went 5. He was trying to take the headlines back.
Hey, that's what I'm saying. No, so LeBron's is huge for the present and near future, obviously. But like on the flip side, AD. And specifically getting that sort of a commitment that you just, that you just mentioned, that could lead to moving pieces, like around him, to get a future running mate. So like they both take care of the current and the near future, but for AD being, basically saying like, yeah, I will give the rest of my, the bulk or whatever of my conceivable prime, to you. It means like, oh, I'm dedicated to this franchise. And honestly, while as you mentioned, they may be close to being hard capped, part of me feels like, this is a front office, and this is a group that has shown that they're savvy enough to make whatever deals and make whatever moves they need in order to alleviate that situation. And if ultimately kind of to the point that you blew my mind with earlier, if ultimately they determine midway through the year that let's go ahead and package up some of these guys and swing for the fences and just go ahead and make this really ugly, maybe sacrifice some of the depth, but be the type of top heavy team that honestly, like, let's just see how special and how fun that can be. I'm at the point now where nothing would shock me. Again, they don't have to do anything. Like as is, I think they're solid. But it is nice. It's a nice place to be for that organization and for the fans of that organization to have the options that they do have.
Yeah, and it's big in the short term because it's big for the long term, where they don't have to operate. If AD had signed a 1+1 or something, they don't have to kind of like be like, well, do we need to plan to like try and actually have, and where LeBron, let's say they thought he was going to opt out next summer, like, do we have to plan, like, we need to try and keep our books flexible because we want to try and add another star, or even just, maybe AD signs a 2+1, like, that's still just so short, and it's like, well, then how long do we plan out for? Now it's like, well, AD is under contract, whether we don't know what's going to happen before his next player option, but 4 years, and we know that we have LeBron, like, beyond next season now, too. Like, it allows you to think, if you include this year and next year, like that's 2 years ahead at least, and that's more than a lot of other teams can plan for, because that's basically the length of title windows right now when you look at what's happened to some of these teams, where it feels like these title windows are open for 2 years maybe for some of these really good teams, like the Warriors being the exception there, and like even them, like their dynasty just came crumbling. So to have that type of stability, it allows you to, I think, make bigger swings in the short term because you know what you have in place in the long term, and that's right now, both of your stars beyond next season and Anthony Davis as your North Star for almost a half decade.
Yeah, let's just say it's not a bad thing to have two, and depending upon wherever you look at them, 2 of the top 5 or top 10, however, I think they're 2 of the top 5 players in the league, like, to start off with. Those are good bones to start, to start the structure with.
Do you have anything else that you wanted to talk about that maybe we didn't cover, something that's undercovered or misinterpreted about this team? Any strong, Quinn Cook or Kostas Antetokounmpo takes that you need to get off your chest?
Not really. The only thing, the last thing that I will mention about that is the first thought that I had, and I mentioned it on the timeline. The first thought that I had when both of them re-upped and extended in that way was, what is this? What is the CBA going to look like? What are they anticipating? Is it possible that they are, they're in tune enough? Is it possible that they're anticipating maybe the elimination of the Supermax, or the limiting of the Supermax, or renegotiations altogether down the line? If I were them, it's not a bad even though yes, you still want to keep continue to play together and you're in a perfect situation, it's not the worst of ideas to go ahead and lock in and make sure you just in case are the last, one of the last of, the big deals like that.
Jabari, thank you so much for giving me over 70 minutes of your time on this podcast. This was a great conversation as per usual. If you guys are not following him on Twitter, remedy that post haste at Jabari Davis NBA. That's at JABARI Davis NBA. He is the co-host of the Dunks and Discourse podcast. Follow that on Twitter as well at Dunks Discourse. That's spelled exactly as it sounds. I think, as you can know by now, that I will be bothering you again in the future. But at the moment, thank you so much for your time. This was a lot of fun.
Absolutely never a bother. I'm not joking when I say it. I love podding, and you're great to do it with. You're great at what you do. So thanks for having me.